Donkey Kong has been a staple of the platforming genre since 1994, when Rare developed and released Donkey Kong Country 1 for the SNES. Known for its revolutionary graphics, fantastic music, and tough-as-nails difficulty, Rare went on to make two sequels, Donkey Kong Country 2 and Donkey Kong Country 3. For over a decade, the Donkey Kong Country series remained dormant, until 2010 when Retro Studios developed and released Donkey Kong Country Returns for the Nintendo Wii. The game was clearly an homage to the original trilogy, as made clear by the word returns in the title. The game was acclaimed, with ratings in the high 80s by both fans and critics alike. Since its release, Donkey Kong Country Returns was remastered and re-released for the Nintendo 3DS, and also on the Wii U eShop. In 2025, the game was re-released again for Nintendo's best-selling console, the Nintendo Switch. This time developed by Forever Entertainment. This is the version of the game we'll be playing today. This game has a ton of collectibles and things to do to truly 100% complete it. There are 9 worlds, each having between 7 and 10 levels, for a total of 79 levels. Regular levels have 2 kinds of collectibles to get. The first are puzzle pieces. These can be hidden inside objects, or gotten after completing a little minigame where you have to collect bananas in a challenge room. The second collectibles are KONG, or Kong tokens, which are letters scattered throughout the level that the player has to collect. These are usually a little less hidden than the puzzle pieces, but can still be tricky to get. The Kong tokens do not carry over between completions of levels, so you have to get them all in one go. That's not all though. After finishing the last level of World 9, the player unlocks Mirror Mode, where now each level is flipped, and the player moves from right to left, instead of from left to right. In this mode, you can't use Diddy Kong, and the player gets less health, with no bonus health placed throughout the level. It's kind of like hard mode, if you want to call it that. There are 4 more reverse Kong tokens to collect in each of the levels in Mirror Mode, but luckily, the puzzle pieces are shared between regular and Mirror Mode. Oh, and the worst of all is that each level has a time trial, where the player can get 4 levels of medals, bronze, silver, gold, and shiny gold if you are really fast. So, for our 100% completion of Donkey Kong Country Returns, we need to complete all of the levels in both regular and Mirror Mode, collect all 216 Kong tokens, and all 216 reverse Kong tokens, collect all 428 puzzle pieces, and finally, get all 79 shiny gold medals for the time trials. With all of that said, sit back, relax, and let's do this. In the introductory story cutscene, we see that life is peaceful on DK Island. That is, until suddenly a volcano erupts on the island, and from it emerge a gang of rogue tikis called the Tiki Tak tribe. They play music that hypnotizes all of the animals on the island, convincing them to steal all of the Kong's bananas. So, it's up to Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong to defeat the Tiki Tak tribe, free all of the animals, and rescue their precious bananas. The Tikis also try to hypnotize Donkey Kong. I don't know why he's immune to being hypnotized, but I love this squinty look he gives them. It always makes me laugh. The game immediately transitions into the first level. I kind of like when games just throw you right in after the opening cutscene. We're just right into the action. You immediately get to see the vibrant and contrasted colors of the game. There's something about Nintendo games where the color palettes and design just pop out so much. We see our basic movement. Donkey Kong can pound the ground, jump on enemies, or do this really fast roll. When you find a Diddy Kong barrel, he will join your side. And while you can't control him directly, he can use his jetpack to help give Donkey Kong some extra hang time when jumping in the air. We finish the first level without any problems and get our first look at the level select. Each world is its own little hub of levels, which are all connected together in a mostly linear fashion, with some branches and differing connections here and there. At the end of each world is a boss fight, which lets the player move on to the next world. World 1 is simply called Jungle, and looks like you'd expect it to. We get lush vegetation, beautiful waterfalls, and we get to play above and below the canopy of the trees. It all looks very nice. We also get to see Cranky Kong for the first time in World 1. He appears in each world and sells various helpful items to the player. Things like balloons for extra lives, or one of our animal buddies, Squawks, who will actually alert you if you are nearby a collectible while playing a level. Cranky also sells 1 key for each world, which opens up an alternative pathway in the level progression. One World 1 level that sticks out to me is 1-3, called Treetop Bop. In this level, we get our first experience with the only playable animal buddy in the game, Rambi. Rambi is really fun to play with. He's almost invulnerable to enemies, except for a few here and there. He can also just destroy many obstacles and dangers in levels, like spikes and walls or rocks. If you tap the roll button continuously, Rambi will charge really fast, and it feels great to play. Level 1-4, called Sunset Shore, is where your view of the world totally changes. In this level, you can actually only see a silhouette of all of the characters and objects in the level, so you have to rely on your knowledge of the shapes of things rather than the color. I love this change of pace and level design. Level 1-6, Crazy Kart, is also super fun. It's the first level showing off the return of the minecart levels from the original Donkey Kong Country games. Something about these levels is just so fun to me. The way the levels change around you and you have to react to so many different stimuli with only being able to jump and not change the speed of the cart is just such a fun challenge. The first boss is in level 1B, called Mugly's Mound. I'm not really sure what exactly Mugly is, but he's kind of like a reptile, I think. He'll charge at you and try to eat you, or try to jump on you. The idea here is to jump on his back when his spike retracts back into his body so it doesn't hurt you. Every 3 hits, he'll change colors, signifying that his attacks are going to get faster. After 9 hits in total, we defeat Mugly, and more importantly, the Tiki Tak member who is controlling him. After finishing World 1, I got all of the Kong collectibles on 5 out of 62 levels, all of the puzzle pieces on 3 out of 71 levels, and had 0 out of 79 shiny gold time trials completed. World 2 is called Beach, and has many of the features you'd expect. I appreciate that the change of scenery between worlds is quite stark. Loading into level 2-1, you just kinda know that you're somewhere new and different. You can always see the ocean in the background, and we often are playing in the sand with a whole new cast of enemies to worry about, like crabs, sharks, and squids that will fly at you out of cannons. This world also starts a trend in Donkey Kong Country games that I really appreciate, and that is telling a story as the player moves through each of the levels. In World 2, the player is making their way through the beach levels as a nasty and massive storm brews. The storm gets worse and worse as the levels go on, and I really appreciate this light continuity connecting the levels together. Level 2-3, Peaceful Pier, is a really fun level. Here we have Donkey Kong Country Returns actually innovating something new relative to the original trilogy. This level is kind of like the minecart levels, except in this one, Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong ride on a rocket ship horizontally. You can't control the speed of the rocket, but you get free vertical movement. The tricky part though is that the rocket is always trying to fall, and the player can only control the upward thrust. This requires some interesting timing skills by the player. Level 2-5, Stormy Shore, is one of my favorite levels in the whole game. The level is where the storm starts to get dangerous. At the start, the water is blue and calm, but you can tell a storm is brewing. After making your way through a cave, the water gets more turbulent, waves begin crashing against the foreground, and you see a giant octopus destroy a tiki pirate ship in the distance. The octopus turns his attention towards our heroes, and we have to make a tense escape from him, dodging tentacle slams and navigating the waves as the storm gets worse and worse. Level 2-7, Tidal Terror, continues this story. The storm is as bad as can be now, and gigantic tsunami waves will come and insta-kill the player. The only refuge is hiding behind large stones that can block the waves, but these are spaced out, so the player has to make a mad dash between each of them to avoid death. To my surprise, when I completed level 2-7, I actually collected all of the Kong tokens in the World 2 levels. This actually opened up a secret level in the world, 2K, called Tumblin' Temple. After playing and completing this level, I got a blue orb that filled in one of 8 spaces. This is good information for the 100% completion. For each world, there's a secret level that is unlocked by collecting all of the Kong tokens and the rest of the levels in the world. We'll have to keep an eye on this moving forward. The second boss is in level 2B, called Pinchin' Pirates. This boss is actually 3 mini-bosses, all acting together. These 3 crabs all have different colors, but all kind of function the same. If you jump on their heads, they'll move their claws, allowing the player to hit them. And after hitting each crab once, they'll initiate a team-up attack, where they all stack on top of each other's heads. If the player dodges them long enough, they'll open themselves up for a roll attack, making them all tumble into the sand. At this point, the player can jump on all of their heads, and if you complete this cycle 2 times, the crabs will go down for good, allowing us to defeat the second Tiki Tak tribe leader. After World 2, our collectibles sit at 12 out of 62 levels with all of the Kong collectibles, 6 out of 71 levels with all of the puzzle pieces, and 1 out of 79 shiny gold time trials. The shiny gold medal I got was from Peaceful Pier, and was actually quite easy. The reason is because once you get into the rocket for this level, it's basically an auto-scrolling level, meaning the timer is mostly taken out of the question. World 3 is called Ruins. This world feels like an extension of the jungle world. It's like if you were exploring the jungle and found ancient temples to explore and go into. There's this nice aesthetic where sometimes in the ruins there are just glimpses of light rays poking in from the ceiling. You kind of feel like a Tomb Raider or something, exploring areas that haven't been seen by monkey eyes in years. One level that sticks out is 3-5, called Itty Bitty Biters. You enter these ancient ruins and discover this hive of monsters that all start coming after you. You have to work your way through them and escape at the end. It's quite fun. 3B, the boss level of World 3, is called Ruined Roost. This boss is a gigantic bird that flies around and throws bombs at the player. The only way to damage the boss is by picking up the bombs and throwing them back at the boss, until his protective casing breaks apart. He'll sometimes dive at you as well to attack. Overall, this boss was pretty easy, I would say. There isn't too much danger, so long as you don't panic while all of the bombs are getting ready to explode. Once I finished World 3, my completion stats increased to 17 out of 62 levels with all of the Kong collectibles, but I did not get more levels with all of the puzzle pieces or shiny gold time trial medals. After that, it's on to World 4, called Cave. If you don't like minecart or rocket levels, you're gonna hate this one, because every single level in this world, aside from the unlockable world, is a minecart or a rocket level. Each level spices up the minecart or rocket gameplay up in different ways. In Level 4-2, Grip and Trip, you ride on minecarts that are not only on the ground, but also on the ceiling, which is different. Level 4-5, Crowded Cavern, is one of my favorite levels in the game. In this rocket level, you are making your way through a cave that has a ton of bats. Some of them are small, some medium, and there's even a gigantic bat that chases you through the level and can shoot dangerous sonic waves. If you can avoid him long enough, he'll eventually wipe out, allowing you to escape the caves. This level is actually kind of hard, especially when the giant bat shoots the consecutive sonic waves at you, eventually culminating in a Godzilla-style atomic breath attack. 4B is the boss of World 4 and is called the Mole Train. I really like the idea this boss fight goes for, which is a boss that takes place on a minecart level. It is a really creative level that I had a ton of fun with, even if it isn't too difficult. The idea is to jump over or duck under the pickaxes that the moles throw at you until you get close enough to attack them. Once close enough, you gotta jump on all of the moles' heads. After 3 cycles of this, the conductor mole comes out, and he has to be hit a few times to end the boss encounter. After completing World 4, our completion totals stand at 20 out of 62 levels with all of the Kong collectibles, 7 out of 71 levels with all of the puzzle pieces, and 5 out of 79 shiny gold time trial medals. I did the 4-3 through 4B shiny gold medals just to practice, because they were minecart and rocket levels, which made them quite easy to just kind of scoop up the shiny gold medals on the side. World 5 was up next, and this world was called Forest. The look and feel of this world is almost like jungle, but it somehow feels darker and more oppressive. There are less of the bright contrasted tropical colors and more of the dark foresty colors. We have to deal with snakes and spiders coming after us, and there are a ton of opportunities to fall into insta-kill holes. There's also a lot of vine swinging and climbing in this world. I think my favorite level in this world, and the one that sticks out, is 5-8, called Muncher Marathon. In this level, these black insects chase you through what looks to be like a hollowed out tree or wood. It feels like you entered their home and they want you out bad. You have to move through all of the level pretty quickly because the munchers are always chasing you. So if you move too slowly, the munchers will catch you and you'll die. It's a great rush of adrenaline level as you try to escape the munchers. 5B is the boss of the world, and it's called Mango Ruby Run. I don't know what this monster is, but he's some kind of electrified worm that can fly around. The idea of this fight is to de-electrify the boss, so you can hit him. To do this, you need to go to each of the 4 spinning circles and pound on the blue-colored markers. After pounding on all 4 of them, the boss's tail will de-electrify, allowing you to hit it and weaken him. After 3 cycles of this process, the boss goes down, and we complete World 5. Once we finished World 5, our completion totals stood at 27 out of 62 levels with all of the Kong tokens, 9 out of 71 levels with all of the puzzle pieces, and 5 out of 79 levels with shiny gold medals on the time trials. World 6 is after and is called Cliff. For some reason, I really like the color palette of this world. There are a lot of purples and blues in the sky, contrasted with blacks and browns in the foreground. There are also these skeleton enemies in this world that are really fun. They're like reanimated dinosaurs. There's this nasty tar in a lot of the levels also, which if you touch will significantly slow your movement down until you pound the ground and get rid of it. Like the name of the world suggests, most of the world takes place on cliffs over insta-kill pits that you definitely need to be careful of. There is also a lot more vertical movement in this world, which is a nice change of pace. Level 6-2, called Prehistoric Path, is a really fun level. This is a minecart level, but it has so many dynamic and moving parts that just make it really fun. There are these platforms that sink in the tar as you stay on them too long. The environment crumbles and falls apart, making the player make tricky jumps with different timings. Also near the end, you get to ride on the interior of a huge dinosaur egg that is just breaking and falling apart. It's a very visually appealing level. Level 6-8, Cliff Top Climb, is also a really great level. This level is almost exclusively over an insta-kill pit, making every jump and every movement you make super important. You also get to blast out of barrels, moving up and around obstacles. Sometimes why a level is fun is hard to describe, but this level definitely ticks that box. I like this one a lot. 6B, Thugley's High Rise, is like a redo of the World 1 boss fight. I don't know if Thugley is Muggley's relative or is just a new and improved version of Muggley, but for some reason, I've always liked the idea of an early boss encounter coming back later in the game new and improved. Thugley has a lot of different mechanics compared to Muggley. For example, he has a protective metal covering on his back now, which protects him from being hit. He can also shoot fire blasts and fireballs. This boss has 3 phases, where in each new phase, Thugley becomes faster and more powerful. You have to hit the boss 3 times to move on to the next phase. And after 9 total hits, Thugley is defeated and we complete World 6. After World 6, our completion totals stood at 34 out of 62 levels with all of the Kong tokens, 10 out of 71 levels with all of the puzzle pieces, and 5 out of 79 levels with shiny gold medals on the time trials. World 7 is called Factory and might be my favorite world in the game. As you'd expect, this world is very industrial. There are conveyor belts, crushers, and electrical enemies that will shock you if you get too close. There's just something fun about making your way through a factory and trying not to get zapped, crushed, or pressed by any of the contraptions going off. Level 7-1, Foggy Fumes, is really good. It's kind of like a precursor to all of the other levels because it takes place outside of the factory. It's a silhouette level, but your vision is obscured by all of the smoke and fog that the factory is producing. Level 7-6, Switcheroo, is also really great. In this level, there are red platforms and blue platforms, and they activate depending on if you've most recently hit a blue or red button. This makes for some very interesting mechanics and interactions where you have to hit buttons at specific timings to get where you want to be, when you want to be. There are also these sections where you have to avoid buttons, because if you hit them, the platform that you're on will go away and you'll fall in a hole and die. This level is tough, but fair, and I really liked it. Level 7-7, Music Madness, is also fun. This is one of those classic levels where certain movements of the obstacles are based around the background music playing. It's just a fun mechanic in a level that I have always enjoyed when it pops up in games. Some of the hammers and machines are on the beat, and others are on the off beats, and if you listen carefully, you can make your way through the level safely. Surprisingly, I actually got all of the Kong tokens from all of the levels in this world as well, and I unlocked level 7K, Treacherous Track. This special level was actually quite hard. There is this platform moving on a track, but pieces of the track are missing and will only pop up if the player hits buttons. So you have to move quickly and precisely to hit all of the buttons fast enough so the platform doesn't fall off the track. I had a lot of fun with this level. 7B is the boss of World 7 and is called Feather Fiend. In this level, you fight a chicken and a giant mechanized robot. He will try to stomp you in the first phase, and you have to wait for him to expose his belly to do damage. After phase 1, he'll eject from the machine and fly around in a mechanical egg. He drops minions on you, which you have to avoid or defeat. Every once in a while, he will try to slam on the player with the egg, and if you avoid this attack, you'll get an opportunity to jump on his head and damage him. After a few hits in the second phase, Colonel Pluck goes down, and we finish World 7. After World 7, our completion totals stand at 41 out of 62 levels with all of the Kong tokens, 10 out of 71 levels with all of the puzzle pieces, and 5 out of 79 levels with shiny gold medals on the time trials. After this, we moved on to the final regular world in the game, World 8, which is called Volcano. This is a very typical World 8 lava world. There are fireballs, melting platforms, and dangerous lava that you always run the risk of falling into. You may not notice it at first, but there's this really nice starry sky background in some of the levels that contrasts really nicely with the bright orange and yellow lava. Level 8-4, Smoky Peak, is one of my favorites in this world. It's a mixture of a silhouette level, a Ramby level, and has this beautiful orange and yellow palette with these nice billows of smoke flowing through the level. It's not super hard if you take your time, but just has that fun factor. Level 8-7 is a super exhilarating level. In this level, you have to climb vertically out of a cavern while lava bubbles up and chases you from below. This level requires the player to have a great mix of speed and precision, because you have to go fast, but also one missed jump will result in death. This level is tough, but super fun. Last up in World 8 is the world boss. 8B is called Tiki Tong Terror, and is where the Kongs get to go up against the big bad of the game. This boss has 3 phases. The first phase is the rocket phase, where the player has to rocket their way up to reach the boss room. This section can be frustrating, but luckily if you die after this section, you won't have to recomplete it. Phase 2 is where we actually start fighting Tiki Tong. I'll call this phase the hands phase, because he attacks you with his hands. Here you have to dodge as Tiki Tong swipes at the player and tries to crush you with his hands. When given the opportunity, you can jump on the gems at the top of his hands, doing damage. After 2 hits on each hand, they'll explode, moving you into the final phase, which we'll call the head phase. In the head phase, Tiki Tong can do 4 attacks. The first is a swooping dive attack, where he'll attempt to run into the player. The second is a flaming bird attack, where he will rain down flaming birds from the ceiling. Some move fast and some move slow, so it's up to the player to wiggle between the fast and slow ones to survive. The third attack is the fire tiki attack, where Tiki Tong will shoot fire tikis that home in on the player, tracking your location. The final attack is a slam attack. When Tiki Tong does this attack, he will expose his head, allowing the player the opportunity to attack and do damage. Tiki Tong will continue attacking until the player has done 3 hits on this head phase, at which point he is defeated. After the fight, we get to see the final cutscene of the main game. Donkey Kong is launched into the air and actually punches the moon so hard that it falls out of the sky, crushing the tikis back into the volcano from whence they came, freeing all of the hypnotized animals, and most importantly to the Kongs, their bananas. From here we get the credit roll, and the main game is completed. But still, we have a lot to do for 100% completion. After finishing World 8, our completion total stood at 47 out of 62 levels with all of the Kong tokens, 10 out of 71 levels with all of the puzzle pieces, and 5 out of 79 levels with shiny gold medals on the time trials. If you watched any of my other 100% completion videos, you know I like to do things in reverse order, from hardest to easiest when completion hunting. From my point of view, the shiny gold time trials are easily going to be the hardest obstacle to overcome when 100% completing this game. So I did those first. Oh, and when I got to a world where I hadn't unlocked the secret level yet, I first went through and got all of the Kong tokens on the other levels to unlock it. But doing that was kind of unremarkable, so I won't talk about that bit. While I didn't know exactly which levels would be toughest, I assumed the later levels would be harder than the earlier levels, so I went in reverse order, starting in World 8 and moving to World 1. When going for shiny gold medals in this game, I like to follow the philosophy of ABR. Always be rolling. That means if you don't have Diddy Kong, you should be using the roll jump technique as much as possible for high speed. If you do have Diddy Kong, you should be using the continuous roll as much as you possibly can. Other than this, it's about playing tight, not wasting time, and trying to path out levels such that you can be rolling as much as possible. One side note here is that the slow load times become so glaringly obvious when you have to restart levels over and over as you grind out their time trials. I won't go over every level that I did the time trial on, but I'll simply point out a few quickly and give some short thoughts. Level 8B, Tiki Tong Terror, requires you to do the first phase rocket portion every single attempt. Oh, and by the way, getting shiny gold on this level requires luck, because the boss's attack are done at random. 8-7, Red Red Rising, requires you to use a minigame shortcut to skip a slow part of the level. I found this unintuitive and annoying. 7B, Feather Fiend, is another boss requiring luck, which is stupid. 7-6, Switcheroo, is really hard to path out to go fast. In fact, the pathing is significantly harder than the execution. So if you know what you're doing, it shouldn't be too bad. 7-5, Cog Jog, is hard to path and hard to execute. This was one of the toughest time trials for me to get shiny gold on. 6B, Thugley's High Rise, is another boss that requires luck. Come on, devs. 5-4, Tippin' Totems is sort of excruciating. The time constraint for shiny gold feels significantly tighter than most other levels, and the tricks you have to perform to do this level fast are really precise and require a lot of planning. If you are trying to get shiny gold on this level, be prepared to practice it a ton and die a lot. 4K, Jagged Jewels, is seriously difficult. Going fast on this level results in death after death after death after death, over and over. It's annoying too, because every other world in level 4 is actually really easy to get shiny gold on, because they're all either rocket or minecart levels. 3-5, Itty Bitty Biters, has these weird tower enemies that feel like impenetrable walls when you try to damage boost through them. They just box you out so effectively. I think I eventually got lucky on this one. 2-7, Tidal Terror, is hard. You wouldn't think that it would be as difficult as it is, because the large waves that you're hiding from make you stop, but that's the problem. You have to go so fast through certain sections to minimize the time spent waiting, and it's harder than it looks. 2-1, Poppin' Planks, reminds me of Tippin' Totems from World 5. The time constraint is tuned really tight, meaning you have to execute multiple tough tricks all in one run. For example, rolling while the planks pop you up in the air to get vertical movement and horizontal movement all together, or skipping this entire waiting section by doing a full roll into the abyss and jumping on the birds to get across. This one is really hard. 1B, Muggley's Mound, requires a special trick to get the boss to move into its second phase faster. Without this trick, I didn't see any way of going fast enough to get the shiny gold medal. Outside of the mentioned levels, the rest of the shiny gold medals were still tough, but definitely on the more doable side in terms of time commitments. After finishing the World 1 through 8 shiny gold medals and cleaning up all of the Kong tokens along the way as well, my completion total sat at 62 out of 62 levels with all of the Kong tokens, 10 out of 71 levels with all of the puzzle pieces, and 70 out of 79 levels with the shiny gold medals on the time trials. With all of the special K levels completed in each world, I was able to open the Golden Temple and gain access to World 9, the Cloud World. This world has a really fun theme. The first 8 levels are all callbacks to the original 8 worlds. So, 9-1 is a jungle-themed level, 9-2 is a beach-themed level, and so on. 9-9 is the last level in the game, and is its own special thing. I would say that, except for level 9, most of these levels aren't actually too bad. I was expecting some super difficult levels with tight platforming, but it wasn't that. The levels were definitely more difficult than the average level from the worlds that they're themed after, but they're not too crazy. Level 9-9, the Golden Temple, is quite tough though. You're making your way above an insta-kill pit for almost the whole level, jumping on small platforms throughout, and dodging a ton of enemies whose attacks are coming from multiple directions most times. Eventually I made it to the end though, and to my surprise unlocked an entirely new way to play the game, mirror mode. So, what I had to do next was replay all of the levels that I had completed, get all of the reverse Kong tokens, and also finish up getting the puzzle pieces. But before I went and did all of that, I decided to finish off the remaining shiny gold medal time trials for World 9. Surprisingly, these weren't actually all that bad. Levels 9-1 through 9-8 were much more generous on their time cutoffs compared to the rest of the game. And while level 9-9 was hard, I had gained so much experience from the rest of the game that I was able to knock it out without too much of a problem. So after this, my completion total sat at 62 out of 62 levels with all of the Kong tokens, 10 out of 71 levels with all of the puzzle pieces, 79 out of 79 levels with all the shiny gold medals, and 0 out of 62 levels with all of the reverse Kong tokens. So to finish off this run, I made a final pass through every level in the game, in reverse order, starting at World 9. First, I would complete the level in mirror mode, collecting all of the reverse Kong tokens, and immediately after, I would do a regular run through the level, collecting all of the missing puzzle pieces. I realized at this moment how much of a crutch Diddy Kong actually is. To my surprise, the game actually felt much more difficult when only using Donkey Kong, especially without any extra hearts to help out during the levels. The puzzle pieces weren't too bad as I used our animal buddy Squawks to help out, and although there were some difficulties making my way through all of the levels, I eventually figured it out, leaving our completion totals at 62 out of 62 levels with all of the Kong tokens, 71 out of 71 levels with all of the puzzle pieces, 79 out of 79 levels with shiny gold medals on the time trials, and 62 out of 62 levels with all of the reverse Kong tokens. And that marks the end of the journey of what it's like to 100% complete Donkey Kong Country Returns HD. I really, really loved this game. It has so much character, the level design and implementation is fun, and the 100% completion brings a ton of hard challenges that most players would never get to experience. When you start to play the game at a really high level, the flow state you get into, speedrunning levels, feels really nice as well. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like and subscribe because it helps the channel a ton. I hope you have a wonderful and blessed day. Until next time.